Before the modern world discovered insomnia as a disorder, the ancient sages knew something far more profound. Sleeplessness is not a malfunction. It is a signal, a silent call from the body, demanding that you pause your external world and listen to the one within. Imagine this. What if there existed a sacred point within your form that, when touched, could silence the mind's noise, calm the trembling soul, and open the gateway to a rest so deep it borders on the divine? The wisdom traditions, from the temples of Egypt to the Vedic schools of India, from ancient China to European alchemy, all whispered the same truth. The human body is not merely biological. It is a living temple, inscribed with hidden doors and invisible circuitry. And within this temple lives one of the most closely guarded secrets of all, a mysterious channel called the vagus nerve. The ancients understood that the body possesses keys to unlock the soul. They knew that certain zones exist where energy and consciousness touch, where a single deliberate pressure can awaken dormant memories, release imprisoned emotions, or restore harmony between the visible and invisible realms. One such zone was stimulated with precision each night, just before sleep. They did not perform this ritual from routine or habit. They did this as an act of communion, because they knew what modern consciousness has forgotten. Sleep is not simply rest. Sleep is a portal, a transition between dimensions where the soul can receive messages, heal ancient wounds, and transform itself from the foundation up. But to cross that threshold, the body must be at peace, and the soul must be willing. Today, science begins to rediscover what the ancients already embodied. Neurological studies reveal that the vagus nerve, that silent thread serpentining from skull to abdomen, holds dominion over the autonomic nervous system, emotional healing, and the equilibrium between flesh and spirit. But the sages did not wait for validation. They felt. Night after night, they placed their fingers on precise points of the neck, chest, and behind the ears, activating that invisible pathway connecting body to cosmos, preparing the soul for its nightly ascent. This is the knowledge that awaits you, not as theory, but as lived practice, not as technique, but as sacred remembrance. To truly comprehend the power of this ancestral knowledge, we must understand what the vagus nerve represents, not merely as anatomical fact, but as a sacred pathway within your being. The name itself, vagus, meaning wandering in Latin, hints at its mysterious nature. This is the longest cranial nerve in the human body, a majestic route that travels from the brainstem all the way to the abdomen, touching the heart, the lungs, the diaphragm, and the digestive organs along its journey. From a purely physical perspective, it is a neural superhighway. But from an esoteric perspective, the way the ancient sages perceived it, it is something far more profound. It is a sacred conduit, an energetic axis that connects the crown of consciousness with the root of intuition, the thinking mind with the feeling belly, the individual self with the infinite whole. The Vedic texts spoke of a channel called Sushumna Nadi, a pathway of energy rising from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. Though anatomically distinct from the vagus nerve, its symbolic function mirrors it perfectly, a channel of ascension and descent, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Ancient yogis understood that by stimulating zones along this pathway, particularly the throat and chest, they could balance the vital life force, or prana, and prepare the soul for its nightly journey beyond the body. Chinese medicine, across millennia, recognized that the heart and small intestine, both connected functionally by the vagus nerve, were organs governing not merely emotion, but spiritual consciousness itself. This is why specific acupuncture points on the ear, neck, and abdomen were stimulated before sleep, not only to calm the nervous system, but to open the gateway to lucid dreaming and initiatic rest. In Gnostic texts, there are references to watching the threshold before sleep, a practice that was entirely literal, not psychological. The sage who touched their body at the precise point before entering sleep was not seeking mere relaxation. They were activating access to subtler planes, where the soul, liberated from the dense body, could learn, heal, and reunite with the eternal. This knowledge was not forgotten by accident. It was obscured by the modern divorce of mind from body, spirit from nervous system. But the wisdom has never truly died. It simply sleeps, awaiting the moment when you remember. Now that we understand the vagus nerve as both a biological pathway and an esoteric gateway, it is time to locate the specific points where ancient initiates applied their ritual touch. These are not arbitrary locations. They are precise stations along the vagus circuit where stimulation carries particular potency. Each point carries its own vibration, its own medicine, its own invitation to the soul. The first sacred point lies behind the ear, in the mastoid zone. This delicate region was touched by the ancients with 2 fingers arranged like a petal, as gently as one would caress the ear of a sleeping child. When stimulated with reverent pressure, this point activates the circuit of profound rest. It is here that the vagus nerve branches closest to consciousness itself, near the seat of hearing. The ear, in spiritual traditions, is considered the most receptive of all senses. It listens without demanding action. By touching this zone, you signal to your nervous system that it is safe to receive, safe to surrender into the mystery of sleep. The second point resides in the supraclavicular hollow, that delicate space just above the collarbone. This region directly regulates breathing and connects intimately with the lungs, with rhythm, and with the inner voice. The ancients understood that breath is the bridge between will and surrender, between the waking mind and the dreaming soul. Touching this point with slow, deliberate awareness synchronizes your respiration, calming the storm of anxious thoughts and inviting the body into a state of serene attunement. The third point dwells at the center of the chest, over the thymus gland. This sacred location awakens tenderness, compassion, and the felt sense of spiritual protection. It is no accident that healers and sages throughout history placed their hands here when praying, when entering silence, when seeking communion with the divine. The thymus is the seat of unconditional acceptance within the body. When activated, it radiates a warmth that dissolves the armor we have built around our hearts. Each of these points, when touched with intention and consciousness, becomes a password between body and soul. The gesture, repeated each night, does far more than calm the mind. It instructs the body. It teaches that rest is sacred, that sleep is not surrender, but preparation for receiving wisdom from planes beyond the material. What separates the wisdom traditions from modern understanding is a radical reorientation of how we perceive sleep itself. In our contemporary world, sleep is treated as a pause, an interruption in the real business of being awake. We sleep to restore the body so we can resume productivity. We sleep to escape. But in the ancient mystery schools, sleep was understood as something far more sacred. It was an initiation, a deliberate journey into subtler dimensions of reality. When you understood sleep this way, the act of preparing the body before rest became a ceremonial entrance into sacred space. Touching the vagus nerve was not casual. It was a formal invitation to the soul to travel, to learn, to be healed at levels beyond the reach of waking consciousness. Consider the emotional states that interfere with sleep. Anxiety that coils through the nervous system. Guilt that tightens the chest. Obsessive thinking that traps the mind in loops. Each of these is a signal that the body believes it is still in danger, still in struggle. The sympathetic nervous system, the fight-flight mechanism, remains activated even as you lie in darkness, and so the soul cannot ascend. It remains tethered to the body's alarm. This is where the ritual touch becomes alchemical. It is not merely a biological intervention. It is a form of somatic reprogramming, a tactile symbol that teaches the subconscious to transition from conflict to surrender. Repeated each night with full awareness, this gesture becomes what the ancients called a somatic key, a physical password that the body learns to recognize. After weeks of consistent practice, merely beginning the touch initiates an immediate cascade of relaxation. The nervous system remembers. The soul recognizes the signal. The beauty of this ancient practice is that it works with the body's own intelligence, not against it. You are not forcing sleep through pills or suppression. You are communicating in the language the body understands most deeply, the language of touch, of rhythm, of reverent attention. With each nightly repetition, you are building a bridge of consciousness between the waking self and the dreaming self. You are teaching your being that rest is not weakness, but initiation. That sleep is not escape, but return. That when you touch that sacred point with full presence, you are opening a door through which your soul can walk into dimensions of healing and transformation that the daylight world can never provide. Understanding vagal stimulation and initiatic sleep is one thing. True transformation occurs when knowledge becomes embodied practice, when theory becomes lived experience. The ancient sages did not merely contemplate these mysteries, they enacted them nightly. Here are 5 practices that will transform your relationship with rest into genuine spiritual ceremony. First, create an altar of rest. Dedicate a physical space as sacred ground. Place a candle, a stone, an image that represents protection or guidance. The objects matter less than the intention you infuse into the space. You are telling your being, here, we enter silence. The body recognizes this sanctification and begins to relax more deeply before you even lie down. Second, the nightly touch without exception. Make this a non-negotiable ritual. Each evening, with full attention, place your fingers on one of the 3 sacred points, behind the ear, above the collarbone, or at the heart center. Use 2 fingers. Move slowly. Breathe deeply. Simply honor the gesture as an initiate would honor an ancient rite. This consistency teaches the nervous system that this touch means safety, means surrender, means preparation for the journey ahead. Third, release the external world before darkness. The ancient wisdom said, "The mind that sleeps contaminated awakens weak." Do not consume news, conflict, or violence in the hour before sleep. The energy of those images imprints into your subtle body and accompanies you into dreams. Instead, choose silence. gentle sounds, or healing words. Guard this boundary with intention. Fourth, gratitude as a key. Before your eyes close, identify something for which you can genuinely give thanks. This act reprograms the heart, purifies the mind, and prepares the soul to receive. Gratitude is the universal language of the soul. When you sleep in gratitude, the universe responds in dreams. Fifth, record your visions upon awakening. Keep a journal by your bed. Upon waking, write whatever you recall: symbols, sensations, imagery. Over time, patterns emerge. These are messages from your deeper self, echoes of your soul speaking in symbolic language. Your dreams are not random. They are communications waiting to be understood. By enacting these practices consistently, you teach your entire being that rest is not a necessity to endure, but a sacred portal to enter with full consciousness. You have now journeyed through the ancient secret, through the science of the vagus nerve, through the specific points of activation, and through the practices that transform rest into ceremony. But before we conclude, there is one final truth to reveal. The real purpose of all this knowledge is not merely to sleep better. It is to remember who you truly are when the noise of the waking world finally falls silent. The modern mind treats sleep as the opposite of life. We measure our worth in waking hours, in productivity, in constant doing. But the ancients knew a different wisdom. Sleep is not death to consciousness. It is consciousness returning home. It is the soul, temporarily freed from the dense body, ascending into realms where time dissolves, where healing occurs at depths impossible in daylight, where divine messages are received in the language of symbol and sensation. For centuries, this knowledge was embodied in the nightly ritual of touching the vagus nerve. A simple gesture, yes, but a gesture that carried within it an entire philosophy: that your body is sacred, that rest is an art, that you are not a prisoner of insomnia, but an initiate awakening to your inner power. When you transform your nights through these practices, something miraculous unfolds. You begin to sleep differently, not desperately, but deliberately. Not seeking escape, but welcoming return. Your dreams become vivid, purposeful, healing. You wake with clarity rather than fog. And gradually, imperceptibly, your waking life begins to shift. The person who honors sleep as a sacred act becomes the person who honors life as a sacred act. This is the true promise of this ancient wisdom. Not merely better sleep, but a life lived with greater consciousness, greater presence, greater alignment with your deepest nature. Because the soul that rests well awakens well. The being that honors the night becomes the being that honors every moment. So tonight, when darkness descends, do not reach for distractions. Do not fight the night. Instead, place your fingers on that sacred point with reverence. Breathe slowly, release the day, and cross the threshold into sleep, not as a defeated soldier retreating, but as an initiate entering a temple of infinite healing and wisdom. Your soul knows the way home. You simply needed to remember the password.